Hello everyone. This session would deal with Aristophanes. Aristophanes was the greatest representative of ancient Greek comedy, and a lot of his works have been preserved for the modern reader. To speak about Aristophanes, his significance is that he is the only extant representative of the old comedy. Old comedy refers to a particular phase of comic dramaturgy, uh, especially that which existed in 5th century BC. The major features of old comedy is that it uses chorus, elements of mime, and burlesque. All these still played a very important part, and it was characterized by bold fantasy, merciless invective, and outrageous satire. It also used unabashedly licentious humor and a marked freedom of political criticism. So Aristophanes, he belongs to the fag end of this phase. And his last extant play, even though it has no element of chorus at all, but we could still regard it as the only existing specimen of that short-lived middle comedy, which before the end of the 4th century BC was then superseded in turn by a little bit more milder and a little bit more realistic form of social satire, which is the new comedy. So, we're going to see what are his literary contributions, or even the biographical details of the early life of Aristophanes. Little is known about the life of Aristophanes, and most of the known facts are derived from references we have from his own place. We know that he was an Athenian citizen belonging to the clan named Pandionis, but his actual birthplace, of course, it's uncertain. And he began his dramatic career in 427 BC. The first play was Daedalus, which appears from surviving fragments, and we know that it is a satire on his contemporaries. The then existing educational and moral theories was satirized in this work. The first work in English, its translation goes like The Banqueters. He's thought to have written about 40 plays in all, and a large part of his work is mainly concerned with social, literary, as well as the philosophical life of Athens itself. And we find that the predominant theme of a lot of his comedies was provoked by the Peloponnesian War. That war was essentially a conflict that took place between imperialist Athens and conservative Sparta. And so it was a dominant issue for a long time in the Athenian politics. So Aristophanes was an opponent of the more or less bellicose statesman who controlled the government of Athens throughout the better part of his maturity, and he also lived to see the revival of Athens after it was defeated by Sparta. So, Aristophanes, if you look at his reputation as a literary figure, his reputation has stood the test of time. It is universal appeal, and his plays are still frequently read, published, and produced in numerous translations, which manage with varying degrees of success to convey the flavor of Aristophanes' pun and witticism, and also a sort of topical allusions. But it's not so easy to say why his comedy still appeal to a large audience even after 2 millennia. So, if you look into the features of his plays or his plot construction, we find that the comedies of Aristophanes are often they are loosely held together. It's full of such strange, inconsequential episodes, and sometimes they even degenerate at their end into a series of disconnected and boisterous episodes. But then, why is Aristophanes still great? So, if you ask that question, we find that Aristophanes' greatness lies in the wittiness of his dialogue, in his generally his dialogue is good humored. Occasionally, he uses malevolent satire. The parody is so brilliant, especially when he mocks the controversial tragedian Euripides. In the ingenuity and inventiveness of his comedies, and also the laughable absurdity that is perceivable in it. His comic scenes are born of imaginative fantasy, the peculiar charm of his choric songs, whose freshness can still be conveyed in languages other than Greek. And also we find that in many of the scenes, the sort of a licentious, frank humor and several allusions can be found in his comedies. So that is the general characteristic features of the works of Aristophanes. That is especially why the plays of Aristophanes continue to be read and enjoyed even today. Now, let's take a look into the major notable works of Aristophanes. So, I'll give you a brief description about each of these plays, dealing with the central idea, the core theme of each of these plays. The first one I'll be dealing with is Babylonians. Babylonian is a comedy, and it's not complete because it exists only in fragments at present. It was produced at the festival of the great Dionysia. This festival of Dionysia, it was attended by delegates of city-states of ancient Greece, which were theoretically allies, but actually they are satellite states of Athens. So because Babylonians not only, so they attacked Cleon. Cleon was a demagogue who was in power in Athens. It also showed the allies as the slaves of the Athenian demos. So, for this, of course, Aristophanes was punished. He was impeached by Cleon for outrightly expressing his political opinions or even criticizing the emperor. Another major work is the Acharnians. This is the earliest among the 11 comedies of Aristophanes, which has survived intact. And that is also a direct attack on the folly of war against warmongers. So it was an attack on war. Then we've next another one is Knights. In the play Knights, it shows how little Aristophanes was affected by the prosecution that he had incurred. As I've already mentioned, he was punished for writing the play Babylonians, for going against the rulers. So, in this play, Knights, it's like a response to that, the punishment, the prosecution that he had to face. So, Knights consist of a violent attack, so you cannot put his spirit down. So, he's again attacking the same demagogue Cleon in this work, Knights, despite being punished before. Another work is Clouds. The play Clouds is an attack on modern education and morals as imparted and taught by the radical intellectuals of that time known as the Sophist. The main victim of Clouds is the leading Athenian thinker and the Greek teacher Socrates. Now, Socrates, who's purposely and also a bit unfairly, he's given many of the standard characteristics of the sophist, and Aristophanes directs his criticism, sharp sarcasm against Socrates in the play Clouds. Another comedy is Wasps. It satirized the Athenians in the person of the mean and waspish old man who's called as Philocleon. Philocleon is translated as Love Cleon in English. This person, Cleon again, he has a passion for serving on juries. The main political target here, so almost all his plays have got a political target, and even in this play, the political target is the exploitation by Cleon of the Athenian system of large subsidized juries. So, another play we move on to is Peace. Another play, Peace, it was staged 7 months or approximately 7 months after both Cleon and Brasidas. Cleon and Brasidas were the two main champions of the war policy on the Athenian and Spartan sides, respectively. Now, both of them were killed in battle. Indeed, only a few weeks before the ratification of the peace treaty, which suspended hostilities between Athens and Sparta for 6 years, but those 6 uneasy years still. So, in Peace, we find that a war-weary farmer, vintager, he flies to heaven on a monstrous dung beetle. to find the lost goddess Peace, and then he discovers that the god of war has buried the goddess of peace in a pit. And with the help of a chorus of farmers, this farmer he rescues her, and the play finally ends with a joyful celebration of marriage and fertility. So that is also a play that deals with the importance of peace. Then Birds. That's quite an interesting play. This play it can be regarded as a comedy of fantasy, but there are scholars who see this play Birds as a political satire as well on the imperialistic dreams that led the Athenians to undertake their ill-fated expedition to conquer Sicily. So in this play, we have the protagonist who is so disgusted with the city bureaucracy that he persuades the birds to join him. He wants to build a new city which will be suspended between heaven and earth. That is the so-called cloud cuckoo land. And this city is built, and this person, that is the protagonist, and his bird. So he has lots of birds to assist him, to support him. So his bird comrades, they must then fend off the undesirable humans who want to join them in their new utopia. And he and the birds finally, they even starve the Olympian gods to cooperate with them. So this play is among the most fantastical play of Aristophanes, but its escapist sort of mood, it possibly echoes the dramatis sense of Athens' impending decline. Next play, a very important play is Lysistrata. This comedy was written not long after the catastrophic defeat of the Athenian expedition to Sicily, and also not long before the revolt of the 400 in Athens, where an oligarchic regime which was ready to make peace with Sparta was set up. And this play it depicts the seizure of the Acropolis and of the treasury of Athens by the city's women, who at Lysistrata's instigation have together with all the women of Greece they declare a sex strike until such a time as the men will make peace. So the women they disobey, they defy their menfolk until the peace is arranged. After which both the Athenian and the Spartan wives reunite with their husbands. So this play is a pure mix of humor, gravity, farce, and indecency. So it's quite licentious, very frank. Another one is Frogs. The most famous comedy of Aristophanes is Frogs. And this is a literary comedy. In Frogs, Dionysus, that is a god of drama, is concerned about the poor quality of present day tragedy that existed in Athens. And now that his recent favorite, that Euripides, has passed away, so what happens is that Dionysus he disguises himself as the hero Heracles, and he goes down to Hades to bring Euripides back to life so that he could again produce plays. So, however, as a result of the competition that was arranged between Euripides and his great predecessor Aeschylus, Dionysus is won over to the latter's cause. And so what happens is that he brings back Aeschylus to life. He brings back Aeschylus to earth as the one more likely, because Aeschylus he believes will be able to help Athens, which is in troubles. So that is the play Frogs. Another play is Women at the Ecclesia. In Women at the Ecclesia, the women of Athens, they dress as men. They take over the Ecclesia. Ecclesia refers to nothing but the Athenian Democratic Assembly, sort of a parliament, and introduce a communistic system of wealth, sex, and property. So the quest of equality, women's equality, that is what we find in this play. And finally, the last among the plays of Aristophanes to be performed in his lifetime is Wealth. Wealth is a very didactic, moralizing work, and we can say that it is Wealth which inaugurated the middle comedy. So, actually, Aristophanes is a representative of old comedy, but with Wealth, we find that the trends of middle comedy start showing up. So shortly after producing Wealth, Aristophanes passed away. So his last two plays were left unperformed. That is But these two last plays of his, it has not survived today. But we know that these two plays, he's written it because his son has staged them. And both of these plays, his last two plays, are generally assumed to have been mythological burlesques. But we do not have the text with us at present. It has not survived, it's not preserved today. So generally, looking into all the plays of Aristophanes, we could say that he was satirizing the contemporary political situation, the rulers there, the tyranny, the oppression, hierarchy in Greece, in Athens in Greece, and the quest for peace, the destructive effects that war could bring. So even he even anticipated the current trend of feminism or women's equality, so in his place. And maybe due to all these reasons, we find the works of Aristophanes is still enjoyed, still read, still studied by critics and students of literature, by general readers. So a lot of his plays have been translated to several languages of the world. And so, as a classical author, that or as a classical playwright of comedies of ancient Greece, he is also known as the father of comedies, because comedy as it exists today, but a precursor of that in ancient Greece, was heralded by Aristophanes. So, that's all about Aristophanes. And with that, we almost come to an end of the ancient classical Greek writers. Greco-Roman writers, the Roman writers as well, that I've dealt with in the earlier sessions. So with Aristophanes, it comes to an end. The classical authors come to an end. Thank you.